Welcome to 129th.
Yes, it's wrong. It's
nice.
I just
seminar. We have another Italian speaker, Cosimo Tarsia Morisco, and he was previously at INRIA, and currently he's NIA's visiting researcher. He will be here to the end of July, and then we'll go back to INRIA. He got his PhD 3 years ago from Paris Tech, and he's been working on a variety of stuff, turbulence modeling and various turbulence modeling, instability, stability analysis, and algorithm development. And he's at the Gamma O team at INRIA, and this is a work he did in that organization. And I like the title, the mixed finite element, finite volume. It's not the finite element versus finite volume. So two methods will work together to get a better accuracy and efficiency. So please take it, Cosimo.
Thank you. Thank you, Euro, for inviting me. And thank you especially for making possible my visit here. So today I will speak about the results of my last 3 years of research at INRIA. We're dealing with mixed finite element, finite volume scheme for hybrid mesh and focus on adaptation. So before starting, I would thank other people involved in this research. Lucille Marie-Tanquès, which was a former PhD student at INRIA in the same team as me, and Frédéric Lozé, which is a senior researcher and scientific head of the same team.
Okay. Do you hear me? Anyone hear us?
Yeah, that's better here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I will start again.
No. I think just a few.
Okay. So yes, this picture was chosen just to justify the this work and present the different approach to grid generation and numerical solution. So we have on the right the classical traditional best practice mesh that are manually realized that involve different kind of elements, for example, tetrahedra, prism, pyramid, and so on. And on the left, we have anisotropic adaptive mesh, where the mesh is driven by the physics. So this kind of mesh are realized with the based on the minimization of interpolation error and are driven by the physics involved in the simulation. So we can just give a quick look to the picture. We can see that on the right, we have 42 million of points, and we are not able to, refine properly the physics that is involved in the simulation. And on the left, we have just more or less 10 million of points, but we are able to focus the points where it is important. So okay, so to do an overlook to the different approach, we have the anisotropic adaptive mesh that are automatic. In fact, for about 30 years, there are robust algorithms that permits to automatically generated unstructured mesh. By definition, are accurate on complex geometry because we are capable to follow the most difficult details that can characterize some practical application. Are accurate for an isotropic feature because, in fact, there is no need of a boundary support to create the elements, but we can just how to say, put the elements where the physics tell us that is important. There is no need of anticipating flow physics because the mesh is generated and it is driven by the physics itself. So now we are changing a little bit the paradigm because a few years ago there were the thinking that the mesh was an entry data, and we are supposed to compute a solution on this mesh. But now we are, how to say, changing the philosophy, and mesh and solution are both the unknowns of the problem. So mesh and solution are strictly correlated, and they are fully unstructured. On the other hand, mixed element mesh that are, to say, the most traditional mesh are by definition time consuming and manual, are inefficient for complex geometry because it is how to say, it is limited to the human skills that it is in charge to do a mesh. It's unpractical for an isotropic feature because as we can see before, it is difficult to align cells in a how to say, not a conventional manner. And there is the need of an a priori knowledge for flow physics because it is manual. And for this reason, mesh and solution are not correlated. But instead, we are, how to say, we can handle different kind of elements, hexaedra, prism, and pyramidal. So at this time, we did not mention any, how to say, topic about accuracy, reliability, or calculation. And the question is, it is necessary, it is yet necessary to put structural boundary elements. So this is the topic of the subject of my talk. So to do a fair
questions.
Yes, if you want to ask a question, feel free. So in order to tackle this kind of comparison, of the fair comparison, we have to develop, how to say, the same numerical approach that this can be transposed from the unstructured world to the mixed element mesh. So we start with how to say, our starting point is Wolf, that is the vertex center mixed finite and mixed finite volume finite element run solver that was developed at INRIA by Federica Rosé, transfer mesh. It is characterized by different treatment for convective flux and diffusive flux. The hyperbolic flux, the hyperbolic part is resolved via a natural LC Riemann solver involving a master reconstruction. But this master reconstruction is quite different with respect to the traditional one because involve finite elements gradients. So this it is called mixed element volume method, and namely Buford scheme, because it is characterized by a fourth order dissipation in is a truncation error. So it is proven to be third order accurate on 2D fully triangular Cartesian mesh, but also second order accurate with the low dissipation on adaptive unstructured mesh. As concerning diffusive flux, the approach chosen is the P1 Galerkin infinite element method, which is known to be second order accurate on triangular tetrahedra. And as for time treatment, an implicit time integration is used with a Beckler-Euler time integration involving Gauss-Seidel under relaxation with a local time stepping to speed convergence. So in order to say introduce the spatial discretization, as I said before, we are talking about a master reconstruction that is original because it involves an extrapolation, a linear extrapolation, but with a combination of gradients. This gradient is a combination of central gradient, which is just the, to say, it is just the projection of the gradient along the direction of the edge, and the upwind gradient that is computed with a P1 finite element method. So to make it simple, it is an edge-based scheme. So for each edge, there is a single flux computed, and the upwind and the downwind gradient are computed on the upwind and the downwind element. So we can see that the upwind gradient will be computed on the upwind element associated to the point pi, and the downwind gradient will be computed on the downwind element associated to the finite element gradient on the downwind element. The problem now is how can we transpose this philosophy to mixed element mesh? So in 2D, we have to transpose this approach on, in order to treat properly quadrilateral elements. The problem is that in the sense of finite element method, the gradient of a quadrilateral is not element-wise constant. So we are, if you want to compute in extracting a point the gradient, we need to do a mapping, and which is defined on a reference element. So to avoid this kind of complex aspect, our approach was based on the fact to obtain a scheme that is that behaves in terms of properties as the same as the baseline scheme on triangular Cartesian grids, but on structured Cartesian grids. So we want to have a scheme that at least it is third-order accurate on Cartesian quadrilateral mesh. To do that, in fact, we demonstrated that this is possible if we use in our extrapolation the finite element, the Q1 finite elements gradient computed at the end point of each edge. So it means that we will evaluate the finite element gradient for the downwind elements at the point PG, and the finite element gradient for the upwind elements at the point PI. In this way, we are able to have on Cartesian grids a truncation error of the third order, so a third order accurate scheme. And a result that is quite interesting is that this scheme is made also well efficient, because we can exploit the equivalence between P1 finite element gradients and Q1 finite element gradients evaluated at each point of the quadrilaterals. In fact, exactly from a mathematical point of view, the evaluation of the Q1 gradient of Q1 finite element gradient is equivalent to a P1 finite element gradients computed on the subtriangles involved at the node Pi. So just up to this point, sorry.
There are different tetrahedral elements that if you have kind of non-tetrahedral element, right?
Yes, we can do the same thing.
So
we can demonstrate the same.
What is the logic choosing kind of one, or which you use to compute the gradient that this node?
The logic is that how to say, when we are Cartesian, so if you use the Q1 finite element gradients at the edge points, we are able to, how to say, to get the right point along the direction of the extrapolation. So in Cartesian, it is a third order accurate because it's like yes, a Friedrich-Keller triangular string. So we are, how to say, our choice is based to have the same properties when we are Cartesian.
So you do not actually divide into tetrahedral.
No.
You
Yes.
just use the gradient from
Yes,
this line.
we use the analytical, how to say, consideration that we can compute efficiently P1 finite element gradients by by computing virtual splitting of subtetrahedral subtriangle inside the element. But we don't.
Analogy. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So up to now, we can say that the extension to quadrilaterals involve a specific triangular splitting that is given from the mathematical point of view. As concerning the diffusive flux, as concerning the simplex element, I said before that we use a P1 Galerkin infinite element, but in order to extend this, how to say, the calculation of diffusive flux also on quadrilateral elements, we use an approximate finite element method, which was developed by Guillaume Puig in 2017. This method was proven to be second-order accurate or quads, And we can see that it is an edge-based scheme in the sense that for each dual facet, we are computed a flux that is based on an edge average gradient of the edge attached to the dual facet. So it means that for the dual facet GM prime, we are computing the average base gradient, finite element gradient on the edge PE PK. So it is, how to say, straightforward, demonstrate that if the gradient is constant, we fall on the same formulation of the P1 Galerkin infinite element method, because in fact, via this kind of equivalence between finite element and finite volume, we can, how to say, agglomerate an edge-based scheme to a flux that is computed looping by element. It is the, how to say, the common practice that we do on a simplex element. So another important aspect is that in this way we are, how to say, using the same the same gradient for a point. So we are not supposed to mess up with the Jacobian mapping when we do implicit, because we have the analytical expression of the flux on each point for each edge, and so we can implicitate directly mathematically, analytically. The last ingredient is the treatment of source stem and boundary terms. We can say that the source stem are a function of the gradient computed as nodes. So in order to compute a good approximation of the gradient at nodes, our philosophy is to use the Clement L2 operator, which is the best in the L2 north sense, constant gradient on the elements sharing the vertex Pi. This means that we have to extend this formula to quadrilaterals. In fact, we can see that for simplex elements, the finite element gradient is constant by m, so we can sort out of the integral. So it is equivalent to do a volume weighting average. So we explore two different ways. A naive approach, an approximate, where we can sort out, approximate the gradient by the Q1 gradient computed at the node. So via the equivalence between Q1 and P1, it's how to say, we can compute a gradient on a virtual mesh that it is composed. This is sorry. That is shown with the dashed line, because I said before that the Q1 gradient evaluated point is the P1 computed on the subtriangle around the point. So we can see that it is a bad quality virtual mesh, because that is well common in the community of mesh for finite element methods, and this kind of elements of cells are very bad to compute gradients, the diamond shape. And it is where this how to say, this consideration were proved also experimentally, because when we use this kind of approximation, it was not so good with very anisotropic and very not structured grids. So if we do the things in exactly way, we can solve exactly this equation. So it means that we have to solve exactly the integral in this formula, and we can demonstrate analytically that is equivalent to the Q1 gradient computed in the barycenter of the element times the area of the elements. And it is interesting, demonstrated that the gradient at the barycenter, it is equivalent to the L2 Clement operator when it is applied to this Union-Jack shape pattern. So in this way, we are using the L2 operator with all the value P1 elements. So we are supposed to do, how to say, to take in account all the possible splitting inside the quadrilateral, not only just a splitting is in a naive method. So now we have all the ingredients. We have the converting flux, we extended to the quadrilaterals, we extended also the diffusive flux, and source and boundary terms. So via given that we are using a philosophy that involves finite element gradients, we demonstrated that, in fact, in this approach, using quadrilaterals is realized just on selecting, particularly splitting inside the quadrilateral. So we are dealing in a sort of virtual triangular tetrahedral mesh. So the question is, adaptive structural mesh are supposed to be better than structural mesh because we are supposed to align the meshes along the physics. So to do a comparison with mesh adaptation, we use Wolf and Fiflois to do a metric-based mesh adaptation on full unstructured grids. So we start with the initial mesh. We compute a metric, which is a tensor based on a sensor that can be a scalar sensor like the Mach number, or can be a functional. And so we have to use a joint equation to solve. After computing metric, we apply a gradation to smooth the field. And after that, we can drive the mesher with this sensor to compute a new mesh. In this way, we interpolate on the new mesh, the previous solution, and we loop to get convergence. So the first test case is 3D case that it is provided in the concept of high fidelity workshop of this year, and it is the Joukowsky airfoil. So on the left, we have the workshop structural mesh that were provided in this context. And on the right, there is the most refined anisotropic mesh that I obtain with the approach that I mentioned before. And we use in this case a multi-scale error estimate. It means that the L4 norm of the Mach number of the interpolation error on the Mach number, it's used to drive the mesh generator. This is a curve of convergence. We can say that we have similar convergence for Wolf and Fun3D on the same structural mesh for the CDP and for CDV, but we can see that the adaptive mesh converge faster on the good solution. So an interesting tricky thing is that given that the structural mesh were not designed based on the physics, on the less refined grids, we need a limiter, even that the solution do not present any discontinuities. And the interesting thing is that with adaptation, we didn't need any limiter to converge solution in this case.
So Wolf solution on structured grid uses limiter?
Yes. For the first three grids.
Okay.
Conversely, on the adaptation, we didn't use any limiter. In this chart, I show a comparison in terms of error, where the reference is the solution provided of Sans P3, and in terms of pressure components of drag and viscous component of drag. We can see, in fact, that the Wolf solution computed on structural grids show a certain fourth order convergence rate for the CDP, while the adaptation solution, which is on blue, it is maybe between third and fourth order at the beginning, but on the most refined grid, it's like second order accurate.
I have a question.
Yes.
So fourth order accuracy, this is an integrated quantity.
Yes.
So do you perform high order quadrature to compute this drag coefficient?
No, I compute the integral for each segment of the mesh.
So the quadrature is second order,
Yes.
but you're getting fourth order. Interesting.
That's not only one code, like sums or other codes. So they take a high order. They adapt on this integrated quantity. right? So they are not adapt on analytical function. They adapt on drag integrate in particular way. So
But this is
not an adaptive grid.
yes, this is structural. The black one are structural grid.
It's regular, so maybe you get a property.
Yes, I think so. I think that's
It's probably in the regular nature.
just to say that it's not unusual to have high order convergence for CD, even if the integration formula is actually kind of piecewise linear.
Conversely, for the viscous part of the CD, we have a second order accuracy for the adaptation for the adaptive grids and the structural grids, more or less. In this chart, I show, in fact, an interesting thing that I noted. In fact, I monitored the solution in its way.
One clarification, right? So that you compute basically nodal-based gradients, which are show the order accurate, and then viscous fluxes you use just average gradient approach. Okay, just kind of clarification because okay.
So in this chart, I was wanted to say analyze the behavior of the solution in its path towards the convergence, towards reaching the machine zero solution. So I pick the solution along its path towards convergence just to see if we stop the calculation before a certain order, we are too much far away from the trend or not. And an interesting thing is that in the less refined grids, even with the residue of the order of -7, we don't go far from this trend. But for the most refined grids, we have to converge as much as possible to be stick to this curve. And another interesting thing is that even that on most refined grids, we are approaching more and more the solution. So the difference are very tiny in terms of, we can see in this table, in terms of the 6 decimal number. There is a great impact in terms of order accuracy recovered, but in practical, there is not a lot of difference in terms of coefficient, hydrodynamic coefficient. So I didn't try, but it is a possibility to ask to the adaptation a more strict, residual requirement, just to see if we are able to recover the same order of convergence that we get in structural grid. Because in adaptation, we don't ask this kind of, zero precision residual to be to have a good trade-off.
The target solution, so you compute kind of convergence order. It's the same that was used in workshop. So it's basically
yes, it's written
solution.
It's written on the top, the reference. It's
okay. I see. Yeah, I see the value, but just to give a context, is what kind of code it is computed. We don't know exactly.
Yes, it's just a reference.
It's basically fourth order solution computed by SANS on adapted grids.
Yes, I just take as a reference, but I don't know if it is the true or
everybody just uses the same reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we got high with the quadrature.
The SANS values?
I mean, the code is with high order quadrature, but in CD integration is just this. Everybody uses the same. I think now I start to doubt so that
Because you're trying to compare the same because I have experience. Unless you take into account the geometry, I didn't get high brackets.
Remember that paper?
It should be in description in the paper and on website. Maybe so. You think the Marshall computed high order integration? I'm not sure. We need to check how he
Okay.
came up with this.
Sure.
That he just made it down, but I'm not sure. Also, it's like Marshall said, not getting the CDP and CDE with some other.
That's a different problem. He, in finite element formulation, he cannot separate well pressure drag from viscous drag because of basically penalty terms on the boundary. They can be related to
I know, I'm familiar with that problem. Yeah.
to different factors.
Cosmo, remind me, you're doing, which metric are you using for this adaptation?
The Mach number. But this is a structured mesh.
Oh, this is structured.
This is structured.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're not doing adaptation on this plot yet.
No.
Okay.
And this chart is not, there is not adaptation.
Sorry.
The adaptive curve are the blue one, is the blue one.
So when you did the study here of, convergence and your.
Yes, I'm planning to do, how to say, to impose more stricter requirements on type of residual on the adaptation to see if we are managed to approach to the same order of conversion we get on structural grids.
The reason I'm asking my question is because if you're gonna be using, it depends on the metric you're using. If you're using
Yes.
something like multi-scale, which is Hessian based, that's fine.
Mhm.
If you're using optical or something like Bellamy's metric or other things like that are relying on an adjoint solution,
Mhm.
that would be, I would think, a bad idea, right? Because now your error transport's not gonna align with the adjoint solution. If you underconverge your solution, you can't get an adjoint
Mhm.
solution that's accurate, that's driving your
Mhm.
metric. I just wasn't sure. Are you, for these cases, you said this is Hessian based?
The Hessian base,
Okay.
in this case.
All right, then you're fine.
And about quadrature, so that like finite element solutions, they look like discontinuous on the boundary, so that
They are just.
so when you integrate, so that I
Why this continuous? This is continuous balance.
this is
This
but
is-
finite element solution,
Yeah.
they look kind of discontinuous.
Yeah, we should talk about that later. Yeah, I'm working on that exact problem for even finite volume.
Sure. So we'll how to say draw some partial conclusion. So we saw that a four-order discretization error concerning the CDP it was observed in the case of Joukowsky, and the solution, the finite mesh, is so close that even the least decimal numbers can have a great impact in terms of recovering the good trend behavior. We saw that apparently only second order is recovered on an isotropic adaptive mesh. But in this case, the minimization of the interpolation error in adaptation is so strong to compensate more than one order of convergence rate, because we saw in the previous curve that we converge on the.
And one possible reason for this degradation, like everybody see degradation of convergence at the end, so that it is possible that the true value that is chosen is not actually correct value, and kind of the difference between true value and the true value, that what makes
Smooth. Yes.
change in convergence.
Especially the quadrature wasn't exact.
I was curious about the y plus between the adaptive grids and structured. So the structured y plus much finer allows it to give higher conversion.
Sorry.
The size of the cells near the boundary, is it much finer on adapted grids?
I don't think so. I think it are comparable.
Oh, really? Oh,
The structured grids, they were very polished, so they were kind of very refined and adjusted to have a good grid conversion, so that it's not kind of out of the.
And when you do structure, when you refine, you propagate. So you are not able to refine just in a point, like in adaptation, just in a restricted region. So if you want to refine the boundary, eventually you are propagating also on the far field domain. So this is I think the reason why in structural weeks we have 700,000 points, and in adaptive mesh we have just 100,000 points, because in the far field we don't put any points. So the conclusion is that the power is nothing without control, and in accuracy order is nothing without adaptation. This is my conclusion, just to make a point. So to tackle the second part of this topic, I will treat about
You should say accuracy order.
yes,
Because, you know.
accuracy order.
is,
Yes,
more-
yeah, accuracy order.
Accuracy.
Order. So in this second part of this topic, I would like to talk about anisotropic hybrid mesh adaptation for 2D cases. And in order to tackle this aspect, I found interesting to deal with the delicate aspect of mixed element interfaces, because okay, now we have developed all the, how to say, all the architecture from the distribution point of view to treat fully structured grids, fully unstructured grids. But which happens when we put all together structured and unstructured? In fact, edge-based discretization are not to downgrade to first order accuracy, as was shown by
Inviscid flux, you need to.
inviscid flux. Yes,
Inviscid flux.
yes,
Like viscous flux, the second order.
yes. I forget to.
Yeah.
And as show Boris and with his colleague several years ago, this kind of discretization method downgrade to first order and the mixed element interface. In fact, the same downgrading is observed in this mixed finite volume finite element method. But I take just as an example the mesh. It's just an academical pedagogical mesh to show the problematic. In fact, in this simple mesh, we just cut a quadrilateral by its diagonal, and we compute the truncation error. So in this case, we are regular, but even if we are regular, with these how to say isolated triangles that appears inside the mesh, we produce a term in the truncation error that we how to say leads to a lack of consistency in our scheme.
That's viscous part. So O1.
No, this is this is V4 scheme. It's not viscous part.
This is now becomes first order.
O1, truncation error O1.
The discretization is first order.
Yeah, discretization is first order, but like it's.
Yes, this is the truncation error. But this is
Second
the
order truncation error O1.
Yeah, but this is a mixed mesh.
Yeah.
And he was saying that the method becomes first order. Irregular mixed mesh. Okay, so that's.
But this is for convective flux. It's a V4 scheme.
Okay, all right.
So in order to alleviate this problem, we followed the same strategy proposed by Boris in his work. So to cluster element of the same topology, so cluster quadrilaterals, a cluster triangular, and minimizing the interface in order to have, how to say, a smooth gradation of the normal at the interface. And so we observe that also in our method for this kind of simple mesh, we observe that yes, we are managed to get second order scheme, but we are obliged to change the local value of beta. So it is like a bit weird. It's not
one edge. You change the beta value over.
No, in fact, I computed the truncation error for this kind of mesh, and I see that I arrived to a set of how to say equation where the truncation error related to the first order is this form. So we can see that we can manage to get second order, but we are forced to change the value of beta local, but can lead to, how to say, delicate consequence if we change just in a point the value of.
At some point, you have all the edges.
Yes.
Has beta one third here and one half.
Yes. No, I didn't try numerically because I was scared about change locally the value. But it's just, how to say, a statement to say that how to say we can get the second order, but this is the condition to get. But I don't make any assumption to do that. So nothing new. the mixed finite volume, finite element method solves of the same problem of the other edge-based scheme method. And as suggested by Boris and Thomas, we can alleviate this problem by clustering and smooth transition. So now the next topic is how we can handle 2D hybrid mesh adaptation. So during his PhD, Lucien Maritain has developed a metric-based meshing algorithm which minimize the formation of isolated elements and which favor as much as possible anisotropic triangles. So with this algorithm, we are able now that we, how to say, developed all the scheme also to treat mixed element mesh to tackle the mesh adaptation. So this is just a supersonic case on an analytical solution of the Euler equation. This is the flow over a diamond profile with a swept angle of 15 degrees at Mach number equal 3. And I choose different value of adaptation in our process. So we can see that he managed to put structural elements as much he can, especially near the discontinuities and near the wake. And when it is possible, it put unstructured grid in the far field. So we can see that the solution is not so bad, and we can do focus. We can see that in fact the quadrilateral elements are put along the shock wave, but there are no a lot of elements in the expansion fund. So in the Mach line enclosing the expansion fund, and we can see that the unstructured adaptive mesh drives the mesh generation in different way. So in this slide, in fact, I wanted to show a comparison of the mesh did on the same test case, but on the left, on the right, the standard fully unstructured mesh adaptation, and on the left, the hybrid mesh adaptation. So as I said before, we can see a lot of difference in terms of treatment of discontinuities. And another interesting aspect that I did not explore yet is that in the mesh adaptation done on fully unstructured mesh, there is this line of very refined elements in the wake of the trailing edge that is not present in the hybrid mesh adaptation. And I think that it is how to say it is yes.
The number of nodes and elements.
Yes, it's the same.
Nodes, not
Nodes.
Which level is the mesh? Is it the finest or the
Yes, defined.
finest?
The 700, the 7,000, yes, 70,000. So in order to say validate the solution, I just computed the analytical solution on the mesh to compare exact solution.
Can you go back?
Yes.
The flow goes from left to right, right?
Yes, like that at Mach 3. So you have an oblique shock.
Okay, this is a matrix base. That's not a joint base, right? So, okay.
Yes, it's just L4.
Yeah. I was looking for stagnation line refinement, and I don't need. Okay. Thank you.
You're right. So in order to analyze the solution retrieve, so I take just a line crossing all the non-simple regions, so which cross all the state after the trailing edge. And I compute the exact solution on the nodes that is analytical because it is you can do by hand with the solution that I retrieve with the calculation. And we can see that the unstructured adaptation managed to capture early the good solution. And there is an interesting aspect. There is the formation, this cusp near the trailing edge that is related to the pattern of the elements the unstructured grid puts on the wake. But we can see that at convergence, how to say, he managed to align all the points in the good direction, so there are no, how to say, problems in terms of solution.
So the previous one was the 70K, right?
Yes, this is
And
the
this is the
2.5K. This is the first one, and this is the last one. Just to show the evolution of the solution, different ways. Another test case that I wanted to show is the hybrid mesh adaptation on the transonic array RAE 2822 airfoil. So this is a transonic RANS calculation, and I plotted just the value of CD SEL just to show that also in this case we have not managed to have result as good as fully unstructured adaptation, and even that how to say on high refined mesh we converge towards the same solution, but we don't have the same accuracy and performance. So just to analyze in terms of difference in kind of mesh, yes, I plotted in this chart the two different adaptive mesh that I obtained, and we can see that the anisotropic adaptive mesh are managed to refine along all the anisotropic feature, so also the MAC line inside this region.
This is
always Hessian sensor.
no, turbulence model.
SA. SA, sorry. So yes, so the anisotropic adaptation managed to refine better the discontinuities, because how to say, this kind of anisotropic feature have not a support. So we are managed to do well structural elements when we have a support from which propagate matrix, but when we have no support, we are not so good to create structural elements. So we can see this in this figure that near the boundary we have more or less regular quadrilaterals, because we have the boundary that give the initial front to the mesh. And but in the wake, this how to say, this initial front is not present, so we have a wavy pattern that we can see in the figure on the left, because we don't have a good initial front to create a end. So this is just to make some partial conclusion. So yes, the directional constraint that we impose in hybrid adaptation to get as small as possible regular grids near regular elements near the boundaries kill the anisotropic ratio. So to how to say, to hope to have a solution of the same accuracy, we have to increase the number of points because of this fact. And these structural elements are guaranteed only near the boundary, because there we have an initial Cleon front propagate. And for this reason, anisotropic features are better covered by anisotropic mesh adaptation. And you have not managed to, how to say, avoid in all the domain these isolated elements. It is an aspect that we have to work on, because it is very difficult to how to say, to avoid this kind of presence, because it's based on the aspect ratio of the elements. So we, in fact, namely, we impose a threshold on the size of the elements to decide to coop or not the elements. So structural elements do not show better results. And the last part of my talk, is quick part, is the extension of this method to three-dimensional grids. So we were able to prove that the same equivalence in terms of finite elements is the same for linear non-simplicial elements in 3D. It means that if you want to compute the finite element gradients in the points P2, this is a mathematical exactly equivalent to the gradient P1 computed on this subtetrahedra around P2. So the same, how to say, equivalence that we saw in 2D, we are able to transpose on 3D to put in place this kind of method. And yes, so this is just a simple verification test. So I take a NACA, I extrude it, I compare it with the 2D solution. So we can see that it is the same solution that we retrieve in 2D, and it is not sensitive to the level of noises. But I not exaggerate a lot with noise, but I increase up to 10% of noise in the mesh, and I didn't see any, how to say, any pathology in the solution. So it means that this method, at least it's robust, but we have to investigate in terms of accuracy, namely when we are interface with different elements. So we made also an extension of the approximation of element. It's quite straightforward because in 2D we have 2 edge around each node for elements, and now we have 3 edge or 4 edge according to pyramids on Prism. So we did the same approach. We have, how to say, the knowledge about the computation of gradients in this kind of elements. So we can apply the same formula, and the same approach is transposed also to pyramids. But we have to keep in mind that for the apex there is a different dual cell that for the bottom vertex. So there is an octahedron. It is not quite simple. So just to be quick, this is a third 3D verification test that I run in the context of high fidelity workshop. I use the best practice grid provided in this context. So this is the CRM, the supersonic flow past the CRM. So I'm at 0.2, and I compare goal-oriented mesh adaptation with the structural grid. You can see in fact that also in this way, full text adapted mesh are better than the structural mesh. And I just plotted CDP and CDB just to, and the same result is for CL and for CM. You can see that the adaptation go faster in the correct way before structural grids. And just a quick last slide is just to make a comparison between the mesh that I explored. So on the right there is the adaptive mesh obtained with the goal-oriented adaptation, and we can see that we have managed to refine the shear layer departing from the fuselage, but obviously in the best practice mesh that are manually realized, so this is not possible. So we can see that we have the same solution, but we definitely dissipate more because we have not a lot of cells to put in that region of the shear layer. And we have the same behavior at the wingtip vortex, so we have the same solution qualitatively. So we can see that at the end of this topic, we managed to extend our method to 3D mixed element mesh. So far, solution on adapted unstructured mesh show better results when compared with structural grids. And there is yet the need to do a local, a rigorous local error analysis in 3D to highlight the details, namely when there are the interface between different elements. And we are preparing a paper with Guillaume Puig, and we are working on that. Thank you for your attention.
3 minutes to the noon, and anybody has a question? This room is reserved to the third study. So
I was too a little bit long. Lots of questions.
Anybody online has a question? I have one. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
It's a good question. I mean, you show high order accuracy, but did you use any high order meshes?
No,
You don't need it.
because how to say, the method that we develop are not good for, I think, for high order mesh. So
But you
we,
can achieve high order accuracy without high order mesh.
yes, I think so. But I don't know because I didn't try.
There are such methods.
It seems like you can, at least in the L1 norm. I wonder if the other norms, like the infinity norm of the area on the surface, would degrade.
Mhm.
That's relevant for my applications in hypersonics. We care about stagnation and heat flux,
Yeah.
which is basically we
Yes.
want to minimize L infinity norm.
Yes, because in fact, how to say, there are some results in the literature. In fact, Frederick in other papers show that to capture, how to say, discontinuities, you need to have a low order norm. And to capture boundary layers feature, you need to have, how to say, higher order norm. So we choose the practice, how to say, our practice is to choose a trade-off like an L2 or L4, where we have different features in the same calculation.
That's in the multi-scale metric you're talking about?
Yes, in the adaptation.
The adaptation, interesting. I should try that.
Yeah, so you mentioned, I mean, your results show that there's overall lower accuracy for mixed element adaptation. Right? So when you know that you have, let's say, quad elements in 2D, you think you can add a constant to your metric and, reduce the size of the mesh a little bit more than what you usually do. And
In
that's when
3D
the
or
offset-
in 2D?
2D. So basically, when you have quad element
Mhm.
and you're adapting, you have a metric, just add an extra constant, right? To reduce the size of that mesh a little bit more, because you're seeing this lower order accuracy, and maybe that could offset.
Yes, yes. But as I told before, the problem is that when you put the structural elements, you impose more regularity, so you kill anisotropy. So as a consequence, you go for a higher number of points. So to get the same accuracy, when you use a hybrid adaptation, you forcefully you go by higher number of points with respect to unstructured grids.
But I mean, you can have quads oriented in different directions, right? It need not be oriented along.
As I experienced by myself, if you have distorted quadrilateral, it's not so good. It's better to have more regular as possible. So if you have to put some regular grid, as if you have to put some quadrilateral, you have to privilege a regular quadrilaterals, because there is not quadrilateral have not the same property of triangle of simplex element that you can use distort element.
And in 3D, it will be even worse because now you will have phase non-planarity.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is the way simplex are very beautiful.
Big time.
Last question.
Hi. Yes, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Very interesting. I was surprised as well that you don't need higher order elements at boundaries, at least. I have a question. So, have you looked at comparing, accuracy versus computational cost instead of computing, accuracy versus degrees of freedom? Because on TET meshes, you have way fewer degrees of freedom than number of control volumes that you have to integrate over and fluxes that you have to compute over. So maybe more relevant in terms of achieving a certain accuracy for a minimal cost. What is the figure there?
Yes, thank you for the question. As I said, I try to give my opinion about that in these slides. In fact, we can see that yes, we can get further accuracy in this kind of structural maths, and maybe we can get an order accuracy higher in adaptation, but we have to ask how to say, more strict requirements in terms of residuals, in terms of adaptation. So at the moment, we don't ask this kind of machine zero precision in the adaptation, but that's the reason why, how to say, converge as much as you can. It's good, but we can see in these slides that to get stick to the fourth order accuracy, in practical, you are changing the last digit of your solution. So it means that you get the good solution, but if you want, how to say, to get the theoretically accuracy, you have to spend a lot. So it depends if, how to say, it is useful, spend all these CPU costs to get a solution that is more or less converge.
But I think the question is, if you compare solution on triangular grids and on mixed element grids, so to get to something that is kind of satisfactorily serve your purpose, would it take more effort on triangular grids or on mixed element grids or
on triangular grids? I think that the problem of mixed element interface is a bad problem. So you always have mixed element interface. You not be able to have perfect rectangular elements where you want. And I think that in practical case, it's difficult to get better.
So your opinion that triangular grids will be faster?
Yes. My opinion, personal opinion.
That's interesting. You spend a lot of time on doing this and developing, mixed element mesh.
It was, how to say, the objective was developing, how to say, the method to do a fair comparison, to show people that, okay, we use the same methodology, same mesh strategy, same numerical scheme. Now we are, how to say, we are fair in terms of comparison. We don't get the same accuracy that we have with simple exam. So we can, how to say, live with the story of the structural elements because in practical case, it's not the good way.
So once you publish this paper, you will be focusing on triangles and tens?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
We passed the same path, right? So we developed mixed element grids and then we moved to PVV, so which is basically back to tetrahedral grid discretization, right? So that even under the hood.
Yeah, that's not, well, but you're showing pressure mostly for this, right?
Sorry?
You're showing pressure coefficients for mostly this. This is pressure drag.
This is pressure drag. Yes.
Did you show any in this presentation beyond a few of these early ones? You showed viscous drag, but did you show it on?
No, I did not the same. Yes.
The age-old problem with tetrahedral meshing has been, at least in my flow regime, my speed,
that viscous flux.
Viscous flux. Well,
at the boundaries.
I don't know if it's the I don't know what it is. There's debate about whether they see it viscous or the viscous, but it seems like tetrahedral meshing gives very, very poor results. But I was just curious. I mean, have you looked at the?
No, how to say? Our experience is that if you compare structural mesh and structural mesh in terms of viscous at boundaries, you have the same value, but it is noisy on unstructured grids.
Yes.
So it is a clean on structured grids. But I don't know yet the answer to that. And
it's clear why actually. So that right, if you have up to single triangles, your gradient is not right. But when you have several up to single triangles, so the error will oscillate. The average value will be right, but error in the gradient will oscillate around the right value.
When you integrate these errors, they cancel. So essentially, I think this convergence of viscous drag is first order, if the solution is second order. But if you're lucky.
I mean, you're intentionally lucky. You do not ignore the luck that you can have. You take advantage of it. So it's not completely lucky.
Okay. I guess.
Thank you for your question.
Time for lunch. Thank you very much. Thank you. Joining online.